This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a popular and beloved show business veteran who has literally done it all from the time he was a child star. He's an actor, director, writer, composer, lyricist, educator, filmmaker, and best-selling author. On Broadway, he appeared in Zelda, the Rothschilds, the Pirates of Penzance. In the movies, you've seen him in Jeremy, which earned him a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer. He also starred in Lucky Lady, Ode to Billy Joe, One-on-One, which he also wrote, Ice Castles, Tribute, The Chosen, Running Brave, Modern Love, which he also wrote and directed, and many more. And of course, he's been immortalized as the voice of the Beast in the Disney blockbuster Oscar-winning movie Beauty and the Beast. On television, he's appeared in dozens of shows, movies, and miniseries, including Death Be Not Proud, The Last of Mrs. Lincoln, The Death of Richie, Our Town, Two of a Kind, for which he received a Golden Globe nomination, Homewrecker, Precious Victims, American Dreams, Brave New World, A Feeling of Home, and most recently, he can be seen in season 2 of the popular Apple TV hit series, Severance. Our guest has also directed over 100 episodes of top TV shows, including Ellen, Friends, Dharma and Greg, The Naked Truth, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Evening Shade, and Dream On, for which he was nominated for a Cable Ace Award for Best Director of a Comedy Series. As a composer, he's written many movie scores, and together with his fabulous wife, the brilliant music superstar Carla DeVito, he co-wrote the hit song We Are Not Alone from the movie The Breakfast Club, and the wonderful song Nobody Makes Me Crazy, recorded by Diana Ross on her Swept Away album. Our guest also wrote the libretto and composed the music for the critically acclaimed musical Open Heart. Our guest is also an award-winning professor of filmmaking, having taught at the University of Utah, the University of South Carolina, and NYU. And if all of that weren't enough, he's also written 2 best-selling books, a novel entitled Who Stole the Funny, and a highly compelling and very poignant memoir entitled I'm Not Dead Yet, which chronicles not only his amazing career, but his miraculous journey as a survivor of 4 open heart surgeries. I am delighted and deeply honored to welcome the mega talented Robby Benson to our show. Mr. Benson, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Harvey. That was very nice. Thank you so much.
You wrote in your memoir that the mathematical formula for your family is strength plus intelligence times compassion plus tolerance. That's a pretty wonderful template for your life. Where did that come from?
I guess it comes from humility, and humility usually comes from a lot of failure. And I think, the more that you try things in your life, some people see the successes. What they don't see are the millions of failures, just endless failure. And when you fail, you learn so much. You see things from other people's points of view. You learn how to listen. You learn tolerance, compassion, and humility. You talked about all of these things that I've done in my life. I don't know if I've done any of them very well, but I've done a lot of them. And like right now has been an incredible time for Carla and for me. We've been making music. We put out a song almost once every 2 to 3 weeks since 2020, since quarantining. I've been an engineer since I was a teenager, a musical engineer back in the analog days. But learning how to be a decent engineer in the digital world is, you talk about failing. I tell you, like every mix is just one failure after another. just wrestling with the mix, trying to get, the best thing that I can get out of a tiny little home studio. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I mean, we're in my little tiny studio. But, I think what happens in music now, and for us, is an acceleration of failure and success. And the success now is getting things done and doing it not just with decency, but Carla and I, we adore each other so much. And to get through these very creative moments and loving each other, and still trying to get the best out of each song, that's taught me a lot as well.
Well, we're going to talk about your music career, but first I want to ask you about your acting career. You've been a professional actor since you were 8 years old, and you've always said that you received old school training as an actor. What did you mean by that?
I started in the theater. Even at 8, I was in The King and I. And then I did Oliver. And the people on stage, you know, stage work is again, it's humbling. Every single performance, you're on your own, you're out there in the light all by yourself. And then there's your audience. And every audience is basically a new performance. You don't duplicate. Someone said to me, how do you do 8 shows a week, week after week, month after month, year after year? And it's like, oh, well, that's not really how it works. It's one show at a time, because your audience is brand new. Every audience is new. And so I was taught by these old school actors, and I was taught so well how to respect the theater, how to respect the whole process. And really, the stage is my most, that's my favorite thing to do on the planet. I just love it. Yeah, there's just nothing like it. And trying to trying to understand your audience every night, moment by moment, and giving them something that they can enjoy, hopefully that they can laugh at, which is one of the things I loved about Pirates of Penzance is, even in the Rothschilds, even when I was just 14 years old, my voice changed, and I made a bit out of cracking every night when I sang, "My name is Rothschild," like that, and I would crack in order to get a laugh. But also, it had to be an honest laugh. It had to be that I was really trying to do my best, so that, for my dad on stage, Hal Linden, and if I really believed in it and still did the little flip, the audience would love it, and we would get a laugh night after night. So anyway, I was on Broadway when I was 12, and that was with Ed Begley Sr. and Lily Escala and Nita Talbot, and these wonderful actors. And this is a straight play. And just learning from these wonderful people who respected, again, the process and the work. There's a lot of hard work, to put on a straight play on Broadway. And it was just wonderful. And then the Rothschilds, it was great. And the thing about Pirates of Penzance, aside from working with Kevin Kline, was that I got the chance to meet Carla DeVito, and I fell in love with her immediately in our first rehearsal. I fell in love. It was like, this is the woman I want to be with for the rest of my life. To such an extent, if we're not sitting next to each other, if like Carla gets up and goes into the kitchen, I miss her. That's how much I'm still in love. It's 43 years later. So that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
That is for sure. And what a journey the two of you have had together, which we will get into. Now, a lot of people may not know that you were hired to play Al Pacino's son, Anthony Corleone Jr., in The Godfather Part 2. But is it true that you didn't make it into the movie because of bad weather?
Yes, that's exactly right. You really do your homework. So I was there for about 3 weeks on the set in Nevada, on Lake Tahoe for that, their beautiful compound. And finally, they got to the scene where Mr. Pacino, at the end of the movie, this is the end of Godfather Part 2, where he's sitting alone outside. And I walk up to him and I tell him that I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to follow in his footsteps. And we did The Master, and the light was gorgeous. And as soon as we were about to go into a little bit tighter coverage, it started to rain. And Al Pacino and I ran, we sat in this big prop truck for about 2 hours waiting for the rain to stop. And finally, they just called the day. And the next day did not match the lighting. And this was back in the day where cinematographers, the light, well, that's what it's all about. I mean, the light, that's what gives you the beauty and the depth. And so they eventually said, we have to go to our Havana set. And so they left and they said, but we'll try to get back to this scene before we finish shooting. And then I got a phone call from Mr. Coppola, who said, Robby, I've decided I don't want this to really break your heart, but I've decided not to do the scene because I don't want there to be a Godfather Part 3. And basically, by you coming in and saying that, it makes you feel like we're setting up Godfather Part 3. Of course, they ended up doing Godfather Part 3, but decades later. But, and that wasn't my only strange kind of work situation with Mr. Coppola. I actually got a part in Apocalypse Now. And the day before I was supposed to get on an airplane and go to the Philippines, they had a cyclone that destroyed the sets. And they were rebuilding, so they had to push my flight and my work by about a month. And in that month time, the script that I had written at the time was called Catch a Falling Star, but it ended up being One-on-One, was bought by Warner Brothers. And I wanted to make my movie. So I had to buy out of my contract for Apocalypse Now.
Well, I'm glad you did, because One-on-One is widely considered to be the ultimate basketball movie. So I don't think you should ever regret that decision. I want to mention a TV movie that you made in 1975 called Death Be Not Proud. You gave a very emotionally powerful performance as Johnny Gunther in that movie. For me, that was the first time I remember thinking, oh my God, Robby Benson is a really good actor. Robby, can you remember what it felt like when you watched that performance on screen?
I learned a lot during that movie. The director, who also directed Ice Castles later, but he came up to me. There was one scene, and he came up to me after the first take, and he whispered in my ear, and he went, "I didn't believe a thing you just did." And I mean, like, all the blood just left my system. And I thought, wow, okay, I see what he's trying to get, and I need to go a lot deeper. And I did. But that was one of the best pieces of direction I've ever gotten, because it was just honest. It was so honest and brutal and exactly what I needed at that time. And it made me understand not just what he was looking for, but what my responsibility was as an actor.
Well, you did a magnificent job. In the 1979 movie Walk Proud, you were cast as a young Latino gang member. And I remember reading that some members of the Latino community took objection because you were not Latino. Do you think those objections were fair?
Yes, I do. I don't think that would ever happen again. It's interesting because I don't think that would happen in today's world. At the time, all of the Latino actors helped me so much. And they were told that by me doing the title role at that particular point in the film, that created a lot of jobs for Latino actors for that movie. And the movie wouldn't have gone if I hadn't played the lead. But and when I thought about it back then, and I was a kid. When I thought about it back then, I thought, well, an actor's job is to become something you're not. And so I didn't think twice. I just dove in. I wanted to do it. I mean, I played a Hasidic Jew. I played a Chicano. I just, every role I played somebody very different, and I didn't think twice about it. But now, I would never take that role now. I would never, because there's too many talented people, and there were then as well. I don't know, really, that was the way the business was, and I just didn't even realize it. I guess I wasn't emotionally intelligent enough at that time to understand what I was doing.
Well, I don't know that it had to do with emotional intelligence. I think it was just we were not aware. We didn't think like that in those days. And now we understand diversity. Robby, I want to ask you about a movie you made with Jack Lemmon, Lee Remick, and Colleen Dewhurst called Tribute. I was really shocked to read in your book that your most crucial scene in that movie was cut by Jack Lemmon because he felt you were undermining his performance. People said at the time that you would have received an Oscar nomination if that scene had not been cut. How do you deal with disappointments like that in this business?
When I found out that the scene was cut, it was, it hurt for about 5 or 10 minutes. And the reason it only lasted 5 or 10 minutes is because I had been in the business all my life. And I realized that I fit into that jigsaw puzzle as if I was one tiny little piece. And what I mean by that is that this was Jack Lemmon's project. He did it on Broadway. And one of the reasons he did it in film was because he wanted to get another nomination. And I think there was some kind of record he was going for. I don't know. I don't keep track of that kind of stuff. But he felt that I was pulling the empathy away from and the sympathy away from his character. And honestly, what I did when I was working on the film, and I would sit and I would study the script over and over and over again, I would plot out the performance as if it's a piece of music. It's this tempo here, it's this tempo here, in order for this tempo at this moment to be lush and exciting and embracing. And so I played him as almost like this two-dimensional character who never showed anything for his father or to the world until this one scene. And in that one scene, he becomes a real human being. And unfortunately, it really worked well. I mean, Sherry Lansing called me and said, you've done a remarkable job. I can't wait for you to see the movie. And then by the time I saw the movie, the scene had been cut. And I couldn't even face people. I felt my performance was so monotone because that scene was gone. And that was pretty devastating for about 5 or 10 minutes. And the reason I say that is because it's very athletic. It's like running a marathon. You heal as you go. As you keep moving, you heal from the past 20 miles. And that's the only thing that keeps you going and makes you stronger. And that's how I looked at it. And have to look at it if you're going to survive.
Well, that's a very healthy way to look at it. And thank God your career really wasn't negatively affected by that cut. Now, of course, I have to ask you about one of my all-time favorite movies, The Chosen, directed by Jeremy Kagan, who recently appeared on our show. I want to mention that The Chosen is widely considered to be the greatest Jewish movie ever made, beating out Fiddler on the Roof and even Schindler's List. You must be so proud of your work in that film.
I am proud of that film. I'm proud about, I mean, it's really what Jeremy did was remarkable. Mr. Kagan made a film that was a period piece in New York City in the summer and did it for like, I think it was a $2 million movie. You know, I mean, he was on the tightest schedule and he had incredible actors, Rod Steiger, Maximilian Schell, and working with this beautiful script. And he really accomplished a lot. He did a beautiful job.
You want to know what amazed me the most? Besides the great performance, you made us all believe that Barry Miller was your best friend.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene at the end where I come to him and my pants are gone and I'm wearing a hat and I'm dressed in a suit and I'm about to go out into the real world, into the secular world. And I had such a problem with Barry because he, at the time, was an extremely selfish actor. And I'll give you an example. In order to make this movie for the amount of money they did and in the time limit that Jeremy had, we would rehearse on the weekends. So we would go to the sets, like to a hospital where in like the scene where Barry got hit in the eye and he's in the hospital, and we would rehearse and we would get it done. When we came in on Monday and we'd start that, Barry would say, I don't like this. I don't want to do it this way. I need to do it this way or that way. And everyone, including Rod Steiger, got so infuriated with this young man. And there was nothing we could do. And I think Jeremy Kagan felt that it was actually good for the movie that we were all on edge. And he never scolded Barry Miller. And that upset me more. I cannot tell you, because again, talking about old school and discipline, not to tell Barry that he's being selfish and he's doing things that have an effect on every human being on this set, from the DP to the camera operator to the other actors. Everyone had to manipulate their work based on his whims. So when we were doing that last scene where I'm about to go off into the real world, I told Jeremy Kagan, I said, put a piece of tape where Barry's supposed to be and get him out of here. I will play this. I'll listen to the script supervisor reading Barry's lines, but I'm not going to do this with Barry. So get him out of here and put a piece of tape on the wall. And so my close-up is working to a piece of tape.
That provides a whole new level of insight into that movie. And my
Oh,
other favorite Robby Benson movie is Running Brave, in which you played Billy Mills, half Native American and half Caucasian runner who made it to the Olympics against all odds. Is that one of your favorite roles?
that is one of my favorite roles. And one of the reasons that it's one of my favorites is because I love Billy Mills. I love Billy Mills, his wife, Pat Mills, who they are as human beings, what they stand for in this world, what they've taught me about Native Americans. And, you know, his incredible journey. I loved pursuing this part as an actor because how much I just respect and love him as a human being.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Robby, that you did Pirates of Penzance on Broadway. That's in 1982. You were one of the hottest actors in Hollywood, and you chose to go to New York to star on Broadway. Why?
Well, first of all, you know, theater that's what I love more than anything. But I actually didn't think that I was going to, you know, I didn't want to replace anyone on Broadway. I always wanted to originate a part. So the idea that I was asked to do this in the park the summer before, but that summer before was when I was doing The Chosen, and I chose to do The Chosen rather than Pirates of Penzance. And I was in New York for the 33rd birthday of Israel. They were showing The Chosen at Radio City Music Hall. And my dream when I was growing up was, do you think there would ever be a movie that I was in that played at Radio City Music Hall? And then they stopped showing movies at Radio City. So I thought, oh, well, that dream's over. And then for Israel's birthday, they showed The Chosen and they flew me to New York. Well, I did all my interviews, my press, everything that I was supposed to do. And I'm like sitting around and I was bored out of my mind. And all of my friends from New York that I grew up with didn't live in New York anymore. And I didn't know what to do. So I called my answering service, which I never did, to find out if anyone had called me that I needed to get back to. And there was a message from Joseph Papp. And so I got in touch with Mr. Papp and he said, you know, we want you to come in and play Frederick now. And I said, you know, Joe, I just can't because, you know, I'm working in LA and he said, please, it's the hottest ticket in New York. Just come see the show. So I went and saw the show. And at intermission, I was shaking. Now this is weird. What I'm trying to explain to you is weird. But again, it has to do with old school respect, understanding what your job is. I was watching the gentleman who played Frederick, the slave of duty. I won't mention his name. Play against Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline, one of the greatest stage actors I had ever seen in my life. I have never seen anyone command the stage the way that he did in Pirates. He was hysterical. His timing, everything he did was just absolutely gorgeous. And what Frederick should be doing is constantly setting him up, throwing him, lobbing him softballs so that he could do what he does. And that's how that particular show in my mind should be. And yet what I was watching was an actor trying to compete with Kevin Kline for the audience's love and approval, which is not, that's not it for me. Now, it may have been for them in the show and all that, but it really got to me. And by intermission, I thought, I've got to do this. And also, interestingly enough, one of the things that made me want to do it is that I'm a baritone. I'm actually a bass baritone. Like anyone who's heard The Beast understands where my octave is, where I sing and what the way I talk. You know, it's down here. It's very deep. Singing the part of a tenor 8 shows a week in an operetta felt like the challenge of a lifetime. And I thought, you know what? I want to do that. I want to work on my voice. And I knew I'd have to work on my falsetto because I could not belt out a B flat in the song Maiden's Breast. I had to go to my falsetto. And so I thought, I'd like to do this. I'd like to give this a try. And so I ended up taking the part.
And as you mentioned, you got to meet your beautiful and mega talented wife, Carla, who played Mabel in the show. Now, you co starred with George Burns in the TV movie Two of a Kind, which earned you a Golden Globe nomination. He was 86 years old at that time. And you wrote in your book that working with George Burns enhanced your life exponentially. How so?
Oh my goodness. I'll give you an example. So normally, like I did a scene with him. We're both sitting in a car together, and the lights are on us, and it's hot, and they're setting up the cameras. And normally, what happens is that the actors go out of the car and they go to makeup and hair so that they don't get sweaty and all that. Well, Mr. Burns is 86, and he said, I'll stay here in the car. And I thought, I get to sit here with George Burns and talk to him for like 45 minutes or an hour while they're setting up. And just everything that we talked about, it was just the greatest experience of my life. He would say to me, you see that guy over there? You see the way he's walking? He's old, but you know what he's doing? He's auditioning to be old, the way he's walking and not standing up straight. You know what? Pretty soon he's going to get the part. I mean, these wonderful stories would come out of him. It was like the greatest experience of my life. And it was during a time where Carla and I had already planned to get married. So there was that excitement of like having to go down to City Hall and sign it during lunch hour and sign our papers and get our blood tests and all the things that you do when you get married. And it was just such a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Yeah, and it was a great, great movie. You also got to play Paul Newman's son in Harry and Son, and he directed you in that movie. You also got to work with Joanne Woodward, Morgan Freeman, Ozzie Davis, Ellen Barkin. Was that a really great experience too?
The experience itself was wonderful. I don't like my work in that movie at all, but working with Mr. Newman and Miss Woodward was, Carla was pregnant and Joanne Woodward knitted our baby a sweater, and Paul Newman became my buddy. And I actually did a scene, I think it was Ellen Barkin's first scene in the movie. And it was her first big scene in any movie, I think. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I've ever been working with a dynamic talent as amazing as she is. And I remember that moment because what was coming back at me was just ridiculously dense and beautiful. Just the work was remarkable. So it was an incredible, incredible time for us.
Yeah, and another great movie. You made 3 films with Burt Reynolds: The End, Rent a Cop, and Modern Love. And you directed 8 episodes of his TV show, Evening Shade. Tell me about your friendship with Mr. Reynolds.
Well, we were buddies because in Lucky Lady, we became very good friends in Lucky Lady because I would do sit-ups and he saw how many sit-ups I could do. One day I did 5,000 sit-ups and he bet Gene Hackman and all of the stuntmen that I could do more sit-ups than they could do. And the money got ridiculously big. then I did it, and I made Bert all this money. I mean, he made millions, but this was a joke. It was a bet on the set. And from that, he and I became really, really good friends. And I think the coolest thing about my relationship with Bert was that I could be honest with him. And that was important because when I directed him in Evening Shade, he did not get along with the writing staff and with the executive producers. And so one day during like one of the first times I was directing him on Evening Shade, he went off book and started doing material that was just too blue for television. And he loved it. The actors loved it. The audience went nuts. They loved it. And of course, executive producers and the people from the network were just dying because they couldn't put that on the air. And none of them felt comfortable going and telling Bert that we'd have to do it again. And he literally banged on the table once the scene was over and says, "I'm not doing that again." And I had walked over to him and I whispered in his ear, I said, "Bert, when you go to dailies and you watch this, it might be an inside joke and you might think it's fun, but you're going to be ashamed because this is it. You can't air this. It won't be on TV. We have to do it again." And he looked at me and he went, "Okay, Robby, let's do it again." And it was because he and I could be honest with one another. And that was the same. He helped us in Modern Love by playing the part of Carla's father in the movie. And he has this scene where his wife dies and he breaks down and cries. And he was doing all this stuff that he's done before in the scene. And I walked up to him and I said, "You know, Bert, I want to see you small. I want to see you crumble into this doctor's arms and be vulnerable. I don't want to see you punch the wall. I want to see you break." And he did that for us. And I loved him dearly, dearly for that.
Well, we're talking about Robby Benson, the director now. You started directing feature films in 1988. Why did you decide to transition into directing?
Well, a lot of transitions that I've made in my life have also been because a lot of it had to do with health reasons. When I had my first open heart surgery, I was in my mid-20s. And the problem with that is that as an actor, you're not insurable anymore. And so when I would to direct, you could have heart problems, you could have anything, you could have open heart surgeries, whatever. And if you drop dead on the set, they'll bring in another director. If you're an actor and you're the lead and you have a problem and you cannot finish the work, the whole movie is over. So I started directing as a form of reinventing my life in the arts, because it's what I knew how to do. I know how to, it was just the next most obvious step for me.
Well, not only was it a logical next step, you happen to be very, very good at it. And I know, Robby, that when you made Lucky Lady, you were treated abominably by the director, Stanley Donen,
yes,
who obviously took a dislike to you for some reason. Did that experience of working with a director like that, did that have an impact on you as a director?
Sure. Every time that I've worked with a director, whether the director did something wonderful for me or horrendous to me, it was a great learning experience, because as an actor, when you're directing other actors, they're so vulnerable. I mean, it's they're showing their entire soul, to the camera, which means to the world, and you need to nurture them and take care of them. And the way Stanley Donen treated me, and look, to be fair to Mr. Donen, he treated me like that because he was making a movie out on the open ocean on the boat Lucky Lady with Burt Reynolds, Liza Minnelli, and Gene Hackman, and me. And I was just a kid. I was like 17, and the movie wasn't working, and yet they were spending millions upon millions and millions of dollars on this movie, and he would get very frustrated and couldn't take it out on Burt Reynolds or Liza Minnelli or Gene Hackman, and so he would turn to me and he would take it out on me. And one time I get shot on the boat, on this one boat, and I fall down these stairs, and then there are all these explosions and fire, and I'm supposed to be dead. And my arm caught on fire, and I twitched, and he started screaming, cut, the corpse moved, the corpse moved. And he started yelling at me, and I went, my arm was on fire, and I didn't really move, I just twitched. But anyway, that was an incredible experience. It was also an incredible experience because it was 6 months and of just intense, tedious, hard work that just, and also I got seasick. I'm not good on boats. So, and I was the skipper of the Lucky Lady. So here I am, the captain of the Lucky Lady, and I get seasick, and we're shooting out on the open ocean. And when the day was done, Burt Reynolds, Gene Hackman, and Liza Minnelli and Stanley Donen got in a speedboat and went all the way back to shore. He made me stay on the Lucky Lady and write it back, which would take 2 or 3 hours. It was hideous. Oh, it was just awful.
That's a terrible experience. And I don't know how anybody could treat you badly. I have to say, Robby, you're such a decent, nice guy. You directed season 3 of Ellen DeGeneres' sitcom, Ellen. Why didn't you stay on to direct the next season when she came out?
Wow, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. That's a great question. There were 2 reasons. The one that is the easiest to tell is that I shot a pilot with Kathleen Turner, and it was a very, very hot show. And Peter Tolan and Nance and his wife he was the writer and she was the editor, and I fell in love with my crew, with the whole project, and it was supposed to be a go. It was with Kathleen Turner, and so I thought, they asked me, they said, will you commit to doing this show next year and not do Ellen? And I said, yeah. And it was really good work. It was strong and fresh, and it was really cool. Unfortunately, after I said yes, they had to replace me on Ellen, and then out of the blue, there were some personality fallouts with the executives and with Disney and all that, and then the show didn't go, and so I was out of a job. So that's the main reason.
That's Hollywood. You directed the last 2 episodes of John Rader's TV show, 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Daughter. What was he like to work with?
He was a dream. He inspired me. I thought I was at the end of my rope when it came to directing television. I thought, I just don't think I want to do this anymore. And then I worked with him. And I thought, man, I could work with this guy forever. he cares, he works hard, he rehearses, he wants to try things. We worked together, we came up with all of these bits, and he would try them. And even if we went too far, we'd look at each other and go, well, let's take it back a few notches. It just couldn't be better. And then he passed away the following week. I wasn't directing that week. He passed away the next week. And it was one of the most, oh, it was just tragic, just so tragic. He was such a beautiful man and
That
talented.
was so
Yeah.
gut-wrenching when he passed away.
Yeah.
Now, Robby, you wrote that you stopped directing TV shows because of something you referred to as the I don't care syndrome in the television production industry, which, in your opinion, that lack of quality control has led really to this plethora of reality television. You still feel that way?
Well, it's interesting because now with streaming TV, there are TV shows that are as good as films. There's really brilliant work on television now. What was happening in network TV and in comedy at that time, in my eyes, was, well, I'll give you an example. The last show that I did, I got a phone call from my agent after a rehearsal. And my agent called me, and I don't take phone calls because I'm working. And I look at that as personal time. But they said, no, you better take this. So I got on the phone and I went, yeah, okay, what's going on? And he said, they're upset with you. And I went, who is? And he said, the producers, the executive producers are upset with you. And I went, well, why? And he said, they think you're trying to elevate the quality of their show.
Are you serious?
And I went, wait, that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. We're making the show funnier and better, and we're finding what's great in their work and their writing. We're bringing it to life. He said, nah, they just want them to say the lines, hit their marks, and over, close up, master, over, close up. And I was like, oh no. And so to me, that did it. That phone call, and that was a very disappointing show where Mel Gibson was one of the executive producers. And oh, I had loved him in Braveheart. And then I met him, and then I worked with him. And I don't think I've ever been so disappointed in my life. And that just, to me, it was like, I need to find something else to do. I can't do this anymore.
Well, look how lucky you are that you seem to be able to do everything. I mean, besides being a hugely successful actor and director, you're an immensely talented writer. I want to remind you, Robby, that your high school English teacher said that you would never amount to anything as a writer. But 1 year later, at the age of 18, you and your dad wrote the screenplay for One on One. You've gone on to write two other movies, Modern Love and Betrayal of the Dove. Plus, you've written two best-selling books, a musical theater production, and a whole slew of music. I like to say that success is the best revenge, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't really look at myself as being successful. I think my success is longevity, the fact that I still get to do the things that I love to do so much. It's like with Severance, out of the blue, I got the chance to audition for Ben Stiller. And, again, I fell in love with Ben. I mean, because he looks at his work the way that I do. He cares so much. And I really hit it off with him, and I got lucky. I got the opportunity to work with him. That was
Well,
wonderful.
you may not see yourself as a success, and definitely longevity is an indicator of success. But when you look at your body of work and you look at the admiration and respect that everyone has for you, both within the industry and in the public, I want you to be assured you are a huge success. But I can't resist asking you about your song, Nobody Makes Me Cry Like You Do, recorded by Diana Ross. I know she changed one crucial high note. Yes. Every music fan knows that. But what did it feel like to hear Diana Ross singing your song?
Okay, so here's how that happened. And this is very funny. So Carla and I were married, and I was, I mean, I'm still just so in love with my wife. I mean, it's just like she can do no wrong. And I'm always amazed by things that she can do. And we wrote this song together, Nobody Makes Me Crazy Like You Do. And Carla sang the demo. And I recorded and engineered the demo in our little analog studio back in the day in Tarzana. And that's how the song got to Diana Ross, because of Carla's amazing singing in the demo. And so we were in a studio apartment in New York City, and I was taking a shower. And Carla runs into the bathroom and she says, Robby, Diana Ross is going to call. And we knew that she was thinking of doing the song. We knew it was with her and her people, and she was going to end up doing like 15 songs on her album, and then she would pick the best 9 or 10 to actually make the album. But we didn't know if our song was it. Anyway, so Carla runs into the bathroom, and I'm washing my hair, and she says, Robby, Diana Ross is going to call. And I thought, and my wife is clairvoyant, because right then the phone rang, and there's like all this soap in my hair, and I'm going, she wants to talk to you. Oh, and by the way, I was told, don't call her Diana, call her Miss Ross. And I went, okay. And I'm like, this whole time, all I'm thinking is, my wife is brilliant. She knew Diana Ross was going to call, and then she did. And it was so sweet. I mean, anyway, so I pick up the phone, and I hear it's Diana Ross on the other. I mean, I'm talking to Diana Ross. And she said, Robby, I want to sing your song, and I'm going, oh, that's so wonderful, Miss Ross. And I like this, and I like this. Oh, that's so wonderful, Miss Ross. But I can't hit the note that Carla hits in the chorus at the end of the verse. I can't hit that note. Do you have an alternate note? And I went, Diana, that note is important. And Carla hits me on the arm. She's like looking at me, and I go, oh, okay. We'll come up with an alternate note for you. And that's how that actually happened. But it was, I mean, so thrilling. It's so thrilling. Yeah, it was really cool.
It really was cool. It's a great song. And when I looked on the back of the album and I saw that you and Carla wrote it, wow. Now, I mentioned in my introduction, you have endured 4 open heart surgeries. First of all, Robby, how are you feeling now?
Well, I'm doing great. Believe it or not, yesterday, I'm a big Peloton rider. I exercise every single day. And yesterday, I did something in a 60-minute workout, or I broke my personal best from 3 years ago. And I was like, whoa. I mean, I'm in decent shape. So my heart is hanging in there. It's doing real well.
Thank God. Amen. Now, you knew you were born with a congenital heart defect called a bicuspid aortic valve. You were definitely having cardiac symptoms for a very long time, but you didn't go to see a cardiologist until 1984. I checked. Yes. Why did you wait so long, Robby?
Well, there's 2 reasons. One, probably denial as an athlete. You know, I didn't want to believe that there was really anything wrong with my heart. I was also told when I was young that there was something wrong with my heart, but I'd probably just live with it for the rest of my life. But I was really, and also I knew that, you know, heart problems, that's like a big no-no. Back in the day, big no-no as an actor, you know, especially as a young, vital performer. People saw me as an athlete, a young, a young man, the kind of parts that I was up for, you know, playing hockey in one, playing basketball in another, even in The Chosen, playing baseball, you know. And so I was really scared that it would have a terrible impact on my desire to keep working foolishly. You know, it's like having things out of balance. I didn't, it was stupid. You know, it was stupid.
Well, in
Um,
your defense, I have to say, when you were a kid filming Jory, John Marley told you the worst thing that could happen to any actor was being known for having heart trouble. Rod Steiger told you the same thing. But I think you've proved them wrong, don't you think?
I think so. And you're incredible to know this. I mean, that's wow. I mean, yes. Yeah. I mean, and I loved John Marley. I loved Rod Steiger. They were such good friends of mine. And they went through hell because of their heart surgeries. And they told me, you know, whatever I could do, keep it quiet. And I went to get my insurance down for personal insurance that I was paying. And I went to the doctor and at UCLA on like a Thursday, and we got a call Friday morning at 6 in the morning. And they said, you need to come to the hospital right now. You need open heart surgery now. And that was like, okay, well, now everything's going to change. And it really did.
Well, you've always dealt with stress by engaging in vigorous exercise. I mean, 8 weeks after your first open heart surgery, you ran a 10-kilometer race. Was that a good thing to do?
It was for me. And one of the reasons it was for me is because it was for the people that I love. Now that sounds bizarre, but you know, when you have open heart surgery and there are people who love you, my wife, my little baby, my mom and my dad, my sister, they were so scared, they were so worried. And I felt it was my job to show them how fast I could bounce back from all of this. I felt like that was really important, to show them that I was okay and they didn't have to worry.
Well, I've
And that
known many people who've had open heart surgery, and they've told me about a condition known as cardiac depression. Did you ever experience that, Robby?
I still do. Yeah, big time. And it's fun. It's interesting. The one thing that I do that helps me with cardiac depression is exercise. Getting oxygen to my mind and using my body helps me. It's kind of a catch-22, you know. But if I don't exercise, I can easily spiral into some very dark places. Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
want to mention that in 1987, you testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee on behalf of the National Institute of Health, advocating for heart research funding and education. You also spoke on behalf of the American Heart Association in support of legislation banning the promotion of cigarettes to minors and prohibiting tobacco companies from advertising at sports events. And if I'm not mistaken, Robby, I believe you have never held a cigarette on the screen. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Even to this day, I mean, you know, when actors smoke, it's a great prop, it's a great bit, it helps them. I have refused to ever smoke on screen. And the only time I ever did was in The Death of Richie. I was supposed to take a hit of marijuana. And so, you know, they put the what is it, the fake non-toxic stuff into the thing so that I could actually, and I did it in one take. I went, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing it. And some people, will say, well, then what kind of actor are you, if you won't do that? And it's like, I got to tell you, we got one set of lungs. We got one heart. It just, to me, it's insanity. I just think there are other ways. If you want to show something on screen, I think there are other ways than smoking a cigarette. And I think I don't want to be someone that promotes cigarette smoking, even if my character's a jerk and he's smoking. I just don't want to do that. I won't do it. I will turn the part down.
You're amazing. You wrote that one major lesson you've learned in this business is that when something good happens, never celebrate for more than 10 minutes. Just
Yeah.
get back to work. Don't believe your own press. Focus on doing the best work you can because it's all about the work. Robby, I think that's how you've stayed humble and avoided most of the pitfalls that so many young actors have fallen into with big egos, bad behavior, even substance abuse. How have you remained so grounded and centered in your life?
Well, I'd have to say that a lot of that has to do with starting so young on stage. I mean, when when I did my first Broadway show, when we did opening night, we got a standing ovation. And we all, of course, I was shuttled off to Sardi's and I mean, it was this incredible feeling of, wow, look at this. And the reviews came out that night, and the reviews for the show were vicious. And the New York Times did not like the show. And our next performance, there were 18 people in the theater, 18 people. And I think that was one of the greatest lessons of my life, that there's this remarkable feeling of success. And the next night, there are 18 people. And then on your way back to the dressing room, you see posted on the wall our closing notice. When you're 12 years old and you have this defining experience of one night having a standing ovation for your performance and the show, and the next night having only 18 people in the theater, and then going back to your dressing room and seeing a closing notice, you realize that what mattered was the work you did, not just an opening night, but the work you did for the 18 people. That mattered. And if you think of what we do in those terms, I think it's much healthier, because what truly matters is the process itself, the work, all the work, and leading up to the work, the process, you know.
So,
So
when you
that's,
focus on the work, do
yes.
you allow yourself to absorb that you are very, very beloved by the public? Do you let that in?
Not a lot. I'm very bad in public. I'm so shy. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
not
can tell
that.
you how shy you are. You're one of the most humble celebrities on the planet. When I was doing my research, the first time you were asked to be a presenter at the Academy Awards, you declined the limo they offered you. You drove your own car there, you parked in a public garage, and then you skipped the red carpet. Now, that's what I call being shy, don't you think?
Yeah, or backwards, or I don't know. But the thing is my job was to present the award and do a good job doing that. And then afterwards, that's no longer my job. That's something completely different.
But did
And
you not enjoy being a famous celebrity back then?
no, no, not at all. Oh gosh, not at all. No, I did not. And maybe that's a terrible thing. But no, I love being alone with Carla. I love I love my life. I love holding hands. We watch TV, we binge shows. I mean, we just have fun together. That to me, that's incredible.
Well, that's why I feel so grateful that you agreed to come on our show because you don't do this very often. And I wanted to make sure that I got my chance to tell you not only that I've researched all about your career and everybody wants to see you and hear how you're doing, but so that you know how really deeply loved you are by the public.
Thank you. Thank you, Harvey. You're amazing at your job. I mean, you're amazing.
Well, that
Really.
means a lot. Thank you so much. I only have one more question for you, Robby. It's this.
Yeah.
As you know, we are the only species on the planet to contemplate our own death. Robby, you have been closer to death far more times than most people, more than anyone I've ever known. What are your thoughts about death?
It's a wonderful question. Wow. I'm consumed with that thought.
You are?
Yes, consumed. Yes. It makes everything urgent for me. Like if I write a song, there's an urgency for me to finish it, for me to work with Carla and get it done and get it out in the world. There's an urgency to enjoy life. There's an and I think because in my mid-20s I looked into somebody's eyes, a doctor, right before they put me out, and I knew that there was a chance I may not wake up. And I think what that does to you is it makes you just treasure every moment of your life and give each moment, as I said, there an urgency, to know how lucky I am just to be breathing. And because I've spent many, many years where I could not catch my breath because of having heart problems. And, so I feel so fortunate every day that I wake up and I can literally walk to the bathroom. So, I'm as far as how do I feel about death, I, I'm not afraid at all to die. I feel that that's very much a part of who we are, what we do, and something that we have to come to grips with. I lost my sister 4 years ago to cancer, and it was one of the most horrible deaths I've ever seen. She couldn't. She had she was completely consumed with cancer by the time she passed away, and she couldn't breathe, and the doctor kept wanting her to lay down and she wanted to sit up, and so I held her so that she could sit up as long as she wanted, and she would put her head on my shoulder so that she could breathe. And she had a very hard time accepting. She had no peace whatsoever. And if I could have given her anything, well, first of all, I would have traded places with her. But if I could have given her anything, it would be this outlook of understanding that this is a very much a part of life. Death is very much a part of life. And if it's our time, I mean, first of all, fight the fight, try to stay alive, as much as we can. But if this is it, if there's any way to come to terms with your own death, I have done that in my life. My sister did not. And it was truly very tragic for me and for her, and for my entire family. It's a brutal death, brutal.
Well, Robby, first of all, I'm very, very sorry to hear about your sister's devastating death. I also want you to know that for you to give me an hour of your precious time when you, of all people, know that every moment is special is something that has gone into my heart, and I will never, ever, ever forget, and I will never be able to thank you enough. Thank you for all the great performances. Thank you for all the enjoyment you've brought to the world and continued to bring through your music. And thank you from my heart for taking the time to appear on our show.
Thanks. Thank you, Harvey. You're wonderful. Really, truly wonderful. Thank you.
Our guest has been the mega talented Robby Benson. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.